and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. North Korea has unveiled a new weapon system that resembles Germany's Taurus air-to-surface missile and announced plans to strengthen its air force. The regime's leader, Kim Jong-un, made the announcement at an event marking the 80th anniversary of the North Korean Air Force, which was also attended by his daughter Chue, in what was her first public appearance in nearly 3 months. U.S. and Ukrainian officials completed roughly 4 hours of talks in Florida to discuss a plan to end the prolonged war in Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the meeting was productive, but cautioned there's more to be done. South Korea's biggest online retailer, Coupang, has apologized following a massive data breach, which affected more than 33 million customer accounts. This prompted an emergency government meeting, during which officials vowed to conduct a thorough investigation. We begin this morning in North Korea that's unveiled what appears to be a new long-range air-to-surface missile resembling the German-made Taurus, signaling a push to upgrade its air power. During an event marking the 80th anniversary of the North Air Force, leader Kim Jong-un said the service will play a key role in the regime's nuclear deterrence strategy. Our Pyongyang starts us off.
On Friday, North Korea publicly unveiled a new long-range air-to-surface missile for the first time in what appears to be part of a broader effort to modernize its air power. The weapon, visually similar to the German-made Taurus system operated by South Korea, was displayed at an event marking the North Korean Air Force's 80th anniversary. Analysts say the new missile, widely dubbed the North Korean Taurus, could significantly extend the strike range of North Korea's aging combat aircraft if its claimed performance is realized. Attending the ceremony with his daughter Chue, her first public appearance in nearly 3 months, Kim Jong-un declared that new strategic military assets and new important missions have been assigned to the Air Force. He stressed that the service would play a full part in exercising nuclear deterrence and must repel reconnaissance activities and possible military provocations by adversaries. North Korea has been accelerating efforts to upgrade its conventional air capabilities, revealing new unmanned aircraft and an airborne early warning platform earlier this year, and conducting mid-range air-to-air missile tests. Experts believe Pyongyang may be receiving direct or indirect support from Russia as military cooperation between the two countries deepens. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff cautioned that North Korea often unveils new systems before they are fully tested, and said further evaluations are required to determine their operational capability. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
And negotiators from the United States and Ukraine sat down for talks in Florida, aimed at finding an endgame to the war in Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the meeting was productive, but cautioned there is more to be done. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Senior officials from the United States and Ukraine met once again on Sunday in Florida to continue discussions on a plan to end the war in Ukraine. The meeting came only a week after the two sides held talks in Geneva, where the U.S. introduced a peace framework developed through behind-the-scenes contact with Russia. The latest round of talks brought a high-profile American team to the table. The U.S. delegation included Secretary of State Marco Rubio, President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff, and the president's son-in-law Jared Kushner. Ukraine's delegation was led by Rustem Umerov, Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council, who has emerged as one of Kyiv's key negotiators. Following the discussions, Secretary Rubio told reporters that the meeting had been productive. Still, he cautioned that there is much more work ahead.
I think we continued that work in our communications throughout the week. I think we built on that again today, but there's more work to be done.
Rubio emphasized that the talks are not focused solely on ending the war on the battlefield. He said the broader goal is to secure a future in which Ukraine can rebuild, strengthen its institutions, and become more prosperous than at any time in its modern history. Umerov echoed that message. He expressed gratitude to the American public and the U.S. leadership for their continued support. He said Ukraine's objective is clear: a strong, secure, and prosperous nation capable of shaping its own destiny.
Of Ukraine, we discussed all the important matters that are important for Ukraine, for Ukrainian people, and the U.S. was super supportive. We already had a successful meeting in Geneva, and today we continued this success.
According to Umarov, both sides reviewed all major issues critical to Ukraine's future, from security guarantees to reconstruction needs. 이승재, Arirang News.
So as we just heard, negotiators from the United States and Ukraine completed roughly 4 hours of talks in Florida. And U.S. officials are also set to head to Russia on Monday. For more on this, we're joined today by Robert English, Director of Central European Studies at the University of Southern California. Professor English, thanks for coming in today.
It's my pleasure to join you.
So the U.S. and Ukrainian negotiators completed their talks in Florida, and U.S. Secretary of State Rubio said he sees progress, but more work is needed to reach a deal. What are your thoughts on this?
My first thought is that we have very few details, and that's a good thing. Because in the past, at every stage of discussion of this shuttle diplomacy, there have been leaks, there have been public proclamations, and efforts to rally the public behind one or another position to pressure the negotiators in one way or another. And that's very destructive. That gets in the way of the negotiators working out a comprehensive proposal. So the very fact that we don't know the details on these key security provisions, strangely, is a good thing. And it means that they're finally working quietly and professionally.
Right, and the plan put forward by the Trump administration quite alarmed Ukraine officials, and the original draft heavily favored Russia, right? What do we know so far about the updated plan, and what key details still need to be agreed upon between Washington and Kyiv?
Yeah, the updated plan is slimmed down. The latest version we knew about had 20, not 28 points. And so they put aside a lot of the business and financial aspects and reconstruction elements. And the core provisions are those that they're negotiating about now. Those would be the amount of territory that Ukraine will cede to Russia. Will they stop where they are now, or will Ukraine have to give up even more, as Moscow's insisting? Secondly, security guarantees, right? That means if Ukraine is not going to be a member of NATO in the near future, what kind of support and where will it be based can it get from its Western allies? And the third would be the size of the Ukrainian military itself. Caps of 600, caps of 800,000 soldiers have been discussed, and that will be a key provision. Where they are now, we're not sure.
Right, and as for Russia, Putin earlier said it's ready for serious discussions about the draft proposals. What might be discussed when Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner travel to Moscow?
Well, that is when we'll see if they've been able to narrow the two sides' positions. If the Ukrainians are conceding on the territorial issue, on the security forces issue, if they're conceding enough to Russia's demands that Putin can meet them halfway. Or instead, will he continue these maximalist demands, which mean the meeting could be a failure? And unfortunately, I expect a very hard line from Putin. I don't expect anything in the way of flexibility because he's convinced that Russia is slowly winning on the battlefield. So that if these talks fail, and we have to wait 4 months, 6 months to resume talks, he'll actually be in a stronger position. He's convinced that he wins and Ukraine loses if the war goes on another 4, 5, 6 months. So he will not be giving much in the way of concessions.
I see. And, a lot of European leaders were blindsided by President Trump's original 28-point plan to end the war, and they fear being left out of the peace talks. What diplomatic steps have they taken so far and are ready to take to stay involved?
The Europeans, as you say, have been pushed to the sidelines, and I think Trump is committed to keeping them there. His most recent comments are almost scornful of the Europeans, and his attitude seems to be, I've heard your position, I've heard what you want us to do, now keep quiet, I am negotiating directly with Putin and with the Ukrainians. That's Trump's attitude in a nutshell. And indeed, the Europeans have no great leverage here. Of course, the United States is the main backer of Ukraine in terms of weapons. We are the great superpower confronting the Russian nuclear power, and Europe can only advise from the sidelines, but it cannot insist on anything. It can issue public statements. It can urge Trump and the Americans to stand up stronger for Ukraine, but it can't make the Americans do anything. And so, yeah, there's a lot of frustration on the part of Europe. And I might add that they're frustrated at Ukraine as well, because this enormous corruption scandal, coming on the heel of other corruption scandals, makes it harder for the leaders in Germany, in France, in England to go to their own people and say, we need to keep financing, supporting Ukraine. When so much money is apparently being wasted, that becomes more difficult. So there's a lot of pressure on Ukraine to make most of the concessions, even from its European allies.
Right, absolutely. We'll have to see how that goes. Professor English, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
A massive data breach at e-commerce giant Coupang has prompted the government to launch an emergency investigation. More than 33 million customer accounts were exposed, including names, emails, and delivery information. Officials say attackers exploited an authentication vulnerability, allowing access without normal login steps. While the exact method of the breach is still under review, authorities warn that the stolen data could be used in phishing or other secondary scams. Coupang CEO Park Tae-jun has apologized to the public, briefing the government on the incident and pledging his full cooperation. Meanwhile, President Lee Jae-myung will deliver a special address this week on the first anniversary of the martial law declaration by former President Yoon Suk-yeol. Presidential Secretary for Communication Lee Kyu-yeon announced on Sunday that the president will also hold a press conference on December 3rd with 80 foreign journalists. He's expected to send a message underscoring the restoration of K-democracy. Later in the day, Lee will have a luncheon with the 5 key figures, including South Korea's Supreme Court Chief Justice. South Korea's first Vice Foreign Minister Park Yeon-ju arrived in the U.S. on Sunday for talks on the next steps following recently concluded security and tariff agreements between the two countries. Speaking to Yeonhap News after landing at Dulles Airport near Washington, Park said the purpose of his trip is to review the issues laid out in the recent joint fact sheet and discuss how Seoul and Washington can move those items forward. When asked if the two governments might create a new implementation body to work through the content of the fact sheet, he said that options being considered. On Monday, Park will meet U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Lando for Vice Foreign Minister level discussions on the follow-up steps. Despite K-pop's global popularity, concerns remain here in South Korea that the nation still has no fully dedicated concert venue. The government has now taken steps to open up Seoul World Cup Stadium for concert use, while Seoul City is speeding up work on a large-scale concert hall. Our Cha Yun-gyeong reports.
Around 100,000 fans visited Seoul World Cup Stadium for the 2 concerts by singer Im Young-woong last May. Although the stadium is a football venue and lacks an in-house sound system, lighting, and stage equipment for concerts, it is the only facility in Seoul capable of accommodating around 50,000 people at once. The main issue, however, is damage to the grass playing field. In Wembley Stadium in the UK, the home of the national football team and also a major concert venue, special protective mats are used to cover the grass when performances are held. One idea being discussed is bringing in such mats as a temporary protective measure. At the same time, a plan to introduce appropriate sound and lighting system is being considered so that Seoul World Cup Stadium can be used as a large-scale K-pop concert venue.
There is a place called Wembley Stadium in London. Blackpink and even BTS have performed there. To protect the turf, they use special mats. We are now planning to run tests so that we can also bring in and use those special mats.
As a fundamental solution, Seoul City plans to build a large-scale concert venue in the metropolitan area with a capacity of 30,000 to 40,000 seats. Additionally, the K-pop-focused multi-complex Seoul Arena features a large concert hall that can accommodate up to 28,000 people and is scheduled to open in the spring of 2027. The construction work started last July. The complex will also include a mid-sized 7,000-seat concert hall, a movie theater, and commercial facilities to transform the northeastern part of Seoul into a major K-pop destination. The Goyang K-Culture Valley project, which had been stalled, is also preparing to resume construction of its concert hall. Looking at the timeline, following the opening of Seoul Arena, a series of venues will open by 2032, including Cheongna-dome near Incheon Airport, the Goyang K-Culture Valley complex, and the Jamsil-dome, which is part of the redevelopment of the Jamsil Sports Complex. With these developments, the basic infrastructure needed to channel the excitement of K-pop into Korean tourism will be in place. However, challenges still remain in enriching the content of K-pop, such as attracting high-quality performances, establishing safety manuals to support them, addressing the ticket scalping problem, and developing tourism products linked with regional destinations. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choo Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. In Israel on Sunday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu formally asked President Isaac Herzog for a pardon, citing national interest as he faces ongoing corruption trials. Netanyahu has been on trial since 2020 on charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust across 3 cases, accused of accepting lavish gifts, offering regulatory favors, and seeking positive media coverage in exchange for influence. He denies all charges, calling the trials a political witch hunt, and claims the process is dividing the nation. President Herzog's office confirmed receipt of the request and said legal opinions will be reviewed before any decision is made. Opposition leaders insist a pardon must include an admission of guilt and Netanyahu's full retirement from politics. In Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and Thailand, nearly 900 people have died after catastrophic floods and landslides struck over the weekend, driven by heavy monsoon rains and Cyclone Ditwa. On Sunday, Sri Lanka confirmed 334 deaths with tens of thousands displaced and the capital Colombo inundated due to Cyclone Ditwa. President Anura Dissanayake declared a state of emergency, calling the island it's the island's worst disaster in 20 years. In Indonesia, over 440 were confirmed dead and hundreds remain missing, mostly in Sumatra, where aids remain delayed and key areas are unreachable. Thailand reported at least 162 deaths in what officials say is the country's worst flooding in a decade. The storm may have damaged infrastructure, cut communications, and triggered widespread food shortages. In the U.S. on Sunday, White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett said he would be happy to serve if Donald Trump selected him as the next Federal Reserve chair. Speaking on Fox News, Hassett avoided confirming whether he's the front runner, but cited a positive market response, including a drop in Treasury yields below 4% after reports of his potential nomination. Trump, who has grown increasingly frustrated with the current chair, Jerome Powell, is expected to name his pick before Christmas. Hassett is seen as aligned with Trump's push for deeper interest rate cuts, though analysts warn he may face challenges uniting the Fed's rate-setting committee. Fed Governors Christopher Waller and Michelle Bowman are among other potential picks. In the UK on Saturday, legendary playwright Sir Tom Stoppard died peacefully surrounded by family at his home in Dorset at the age of 88, according to his agent. Tributes poured in from around the world, with King Charles III calling him, quote, one of our greatest writers. Stoppard, known for both the play and film versions of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead and Shakespeare in Love, won an Oscar, 5 Tonys, and 3 Olivier Awards during a career that spanned more than 6 decades. He had been ill in recent months, but no cause of death was formally disclosed.
We've officially stepped into December, and winter is wasting no time settling in. Cold air from the north is pushing down across the country, and temperatures will continue to drop through the week. On Wednesday, Seoul starts off at just -7 degrees Celsius, but along with the wind, it will feel closer to below -10 degrees, and it's going to stay below freezing all day on Wednesday. And despite a colder air, a touch of yellow dust is also hanging around today, making the air murky across Korea. But colder northwesterly winds will gradually clear the air later on. And most places will be running colder than yesterday, and Seoul will be topping out at 8 degrees Celsius, Gwangju topping out at 12 degrees. Along the East Coast, the air remains very dry, with dry weather advisories in place with strong winds. So please be extra careful to prevent fires. This week will bring both snow and rain. Western parts of Korea in particular could see 8 to 10 centimeters of snow piling up. So some rough weather week ahead. Take care.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.